Welcome, everyone. It is 5:30, so I'll call to order this meeting of the Community Preservation Committee. Like I said, 5:30, February 7th, 2024. We've got Susan doing the notes this meeting. We'll do a roll call for attendance here. Susan,
Here.
Wisty,
Here.
Donna,
Here.
Garth. I don't see,
Oh, yeah.
Garth's here. Garth is here. All right, David,
Here.
Amy.
Here.
All right, and Tom was on the list, but Tom has actually resigned. So he is no longer a member of the CPC. So we do have a quorum.
Yeah.
We actually have everyone here tonight, which is exciting.
Is there a new housing person in the works?
This was just happened, so probably not yet.
Today.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So thank you to Tom for all his efforts over the years. I already sent him an email, but I'll say it in the meeting too.
Resigned from the committee.
Both. He resigned from this committee and Greenfield Housing Authority. All right, so on our agenda, we've got a public comment period. If there's anyone here from the public who would like to make a comment, in person, I think we only have applicants in person. Anyone out in the cyber world? Not seeing anyone, so. All right, we'll move on from the public comment period. So we've got approval of minutes. I forgot to say this. You probably heard the CPC is recording this meeting. And if anyone else is recording, you're required to let me know. Sorry, I forgot to say that right at the beginning. All right, so we have approval of meeting minutes from January 31st, 2024. Anyone want a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
All right. So we have, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion by Garth, second by Donna. Any other discussion on those minutes? I have no discussion. Okay. Since we are in this hybrid situation, we'll do a roll call vote for approval of the minutes. Susan,
Abstain.
Wisty,
Approve.
Donna,
Approve.
Garth,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Amy.
Abstain.
All right, and I am a yes, so 2 abstentions, and that motion is approved. So on to our new business for tonight. Tonight we'll be finishing up our initial application review for CPA projects for this year. Tonight's focus is housing. So first on the list, we have Greater 156, 176 Main Street housing. And Christian, would you be able to share again? Okay, so we'll have Christian share the application on the screen. And yeah, I was going to bring it up to you. So yeah, downtown Greenfield housing, total project cost 359,500, CPA funds requested 50,000. This is essentially pre-development activities to determine feasibility and design for new housing at 156 to 176 Main Street, including the Legion Avenue parking lot. Activities including market study, design, engineering, environmental investigation, financial feasibility. So yeah, maybe if you could just scroll down to the budget section. And then We can scroll around, but does anyone have any initial questions? on this one?
I have two.
Okay.
Okay, and they may not be answerable.
Yeah, if you want to come up to the table, and that way we can hear you and they can hear you.
Just because they may be too early, but.
Probably, but go ahead.
Okay, you talk about 20 to 72 apartments.
Sure.
Is there any refinement on that? Do you have any?
So I can tell you what I do know.
Okay,
So I started this project independently through a partnership with Mass Housing Partnership. They came forward with some grant money to do some very initial architectural designs and to do some economic feasibility studies. At that point, there was some discussion about doing two different projects, one in the front and adding multiple stories to the one-story building at 170 to 186 Main Street. That's where the co-op has their community room, all the way over to where Ada has her antique store. It used to be, if you've been around for a little bit, used to be Opus. Those buildings used to have upper stories, and at that time, the plan was to incorporate the lot where the city took down the building as a little garden space and setback, elevator bank and access, so that residents could use both the back and the front, could enter both ways. With working very closely with Mass Housing Partnership, we've spent some considerable funds so far. They've introduced me to a couple of different development partners. As a private developer, you need to partner with a experienced nonprofit developer to take advantage of some of the state funding programs. And as you were a little of the chatter before the meeting, the economic development costs are very, very high. So we've developed and we've signed an MOU in a partnership with Rural Development Inc. And Alyssa is here from Rural Development Inc. as well tonight, so she can help answer questions. And in meeting with Rural Development and having some more sort of internal pre-development studies, discussions, and working with their team, we've come to reconsider the site plan a little bit based on their management experience. And so the thought is now to group most of the development to the front of the lot to allow for some more parking. Their experience is that parking is more important for their guests. That's an important thing, even though the downtown parking study has indicated that there's sufficient parking. There's that their experience as residents having parking near housing, even if it's downtown, is important. And prior to this, when we were over 70 units, there was two different buildings. One was being focused on senior housing, and I think that there was some interest in that from the prior mayoral administration. The data we're seeing is maybe there's not such a demand for that. And so we are working on some of this grant money will go towards a market feasibility study and redrafting and revamping our architectural plans.
okay. So basically the answer is right now, you're not sure.
I'm not sure.
Okay, okay.
I think, Alyssa,
Yeah, I can
they-
jump in a little.
go ahead. I think there were some economic numbers we were reviewing recently on that. Yeah.
Yeah, so just a couple of things. So we're kind of starting to hone in on roughly a 40 to 60 unit range potentially, but we need to do some more financial feasibility analysis to kind of figure out what the best mix will be given the funding sources available. The other thing too is in terms of the senior housing, what we're moving away from is age restricted housing, but we're not moving away from the concept of serving seniors and providing kind of accessible housing downtown. It's just that there's less funding sources available when you age restrict the properties. And so by kind of providing housing that serves a range of ages and household types, you can serve seniors as well as younger households. So I just wanted to clarify that. And there are some larger existing age restricted senior housing in the downtown already. So that's where we're at with that.
Can I just, you kind of touched on the other question I had, which is around the income mix. How are you seeing that develop at this point?
You want me to go for it, Alyssa, or do you?
I can jump in. So we're still working through that, and that's part of what this funding would help with, is doing a market study to see where, you know, the different thresholds are that are in most need, but we know that housing is needed at a variety of income levels. So at this point, I think we're looking at a mix of incomes, but we haven't nailed down exactly, you know, what the different threshold, you know, income levels will be at this point.
I think
And
there's
Tim,
a
you want
concern.
to add to that? Yeah.
I think there's a concern on my part as a developer, and I know that we've discussed a little bit in that there are other affordable housing developments coming to downtown Greenfield, so we wanted to make sure that we aren't all targeting the same group of people. And that I think it's important to make sure that we have a broad mix to help support some of the restaurants and shops and vendors downtown.
Gareth has his hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question is probably along the same lines on like, right, obviously affordable has an official meaning, which is typically unaffordable to anybody who's actually, you know, just sort of working a job. But yeah, like sort of what the mix what was looking like for this, and it seems like it's TBD, depending on the studies at all.
Correct.
Correct.
Which might run into, I mean, I my sense is I thought like the CPA stuff was restricted to, you know, quote affordable housing, you know, and various deed restrictions and stuff, so that, like, you know, that might run into problems for you, trying to.
Well, I think we're all going to use
trying to
affordable
get CPA
housing
funds for that
project, you know. I'm learning a lot about affordable housing from Alyssa through this process, and that it's a broad range of percentage of the average income within the market, and we will be somewhere within that range. We're just not sure where we're going to fall within that range. I don't
Yes.
think we're going to have any open just market units. Sorry,
Right.
Alyssa.
So no, that's okay. That's exactly right. So CPA funding can be used towards housing that serves up to households earning up to 100% of area median income.
Right.
And we most likely will be falling certainly below that. So a good portion of the units will likely be funded through low-income housing tax credits, which can potentially serve up to 80% of area median income. There are other funding sources that allow you to go higher, but in general, we'd be falling within that 100% AMI for most, if not all, of the units. But the idea is that there'd be a range, a mix within that, and trying to figure that out is where we're at this time.
Gotcha. Thanks. Yeah, I know like the Amherst stuff. I've seen the lottery things for the new stuff on, I forget what the road is called there, but functionally on Route 9. Right, and so they have like, you know, 60, 80, 100% AMI stuff in there. Cool, thank you.
And Garth, just so you know, right now for an individual without other dependents, without other family members, AMI is for Franklin County is somewhere around 60,000. So just to give you an idea of that we're talking about at 100% AMI, we're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of $60,000
For one person.
for one person as an income.
And 80% is like 55,000.
Right.
Tim, do you see, like,
I gotta get a new job.
do you anticipate the governor's bill impacting how you approach this project? Because it seems like with the bonding and stuff, it might change what you're thinking about doing.
You know, yes, I do. We've been working on this for a couple of years, and you know, I struggled, Mass Housing Partnership, and I struggled getting people to pick up the phone. We had hired a financial, somebody to help us with financial modeling, and the numbers were just like, this is not going to work. Like we're just butting up against the walls. We couldn't get community builders to pick up the phone for us, along with a lot of other different development partners from across the state. Until the governor announced her focus on housing, and then the feasibility consultant was like, let's dust this off and open it up again. So there seems to be a lot more activity because of her focus on housing, at least from my limited experience.
But do you think your project, like the amount of units or like what, do you anticipate there being like a shift in?
I would look to Alyssa on that because she understands. Alyssa understands the requirements and the limits that different funding sources have or limit or allow. And I don't know if those have changed. Have they, Alyssa?
Yeah, I mean, there's advocacy across the state for some changes in terms of both the scoring criteria. Costs have gone up everywhere. And so I think hopefully we'll see an increase in kind of the subsidy per unit that's allowed in projects, because I think it's going to be needed across the state. Right now, our organization, as well as many others in Western Mass, are advocating for, equitable distribution of the housing funds that are in the bond bill, to make sure that Western Mass gets its fair share. So we're making a lot of noise and trying to kind of just advocate for our region. But I think Greenfield is in a good position for applying for funding over the next 5 years. But it takes time to get to that point. And so that's kind of what this application is about, is supporting kind of all the work that goes into getting a project ready to apply at the state level, which requires a pretty high threshold of design and the permitting and everything like that.
Any other question? I think Donna's got a question.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I am curious as to how you came to the number of 50,000. It seems as though that's sort of just a piece of it, but not necessarily a specific piece.
I think it's being combined with other granting funding sources. So with our partnership with Rural Development Inc., we've applied for CDAC funding sources as well, which I think will make up the remainder of that budget.
Yeah,
Is that correct, Alyssa?
Yep. Yeah, we would be applying for additional pre-development funds. Those would be a loan, as opposed to CPC funding being a grant to the project. So the 50,000 was seen as a kind of an appropriate ask that would help us kind of move this project along and show local support, but not, totally drain your budget. And because there's a lot of other important projects that you're considering. So that's kind of where we came at it from.
I guess my question is about, once this affordable housing would be built, is this going to be like affordable in perpetuity with like a deed restriction, or what's the plan going?
Go ahead,
forward at
Alyssa.
that point?
Sure.
I mean, it sounds
Yeah,
like with
so
the other funding sources that might be required too.
Yes.
Yeah, so the minimum period of affordability typically for Massachusetts, when you're going for all these different funding sources, is 30 years. And then that could get extended depending on, refinancing and things like that. Rural Development Inc., we're, a bit mission-based nonprofit. So our intent when we're developing these projects is to serve the community long-term with, quality, affordable housing. But the minimum would be 30 years.
Donna, did you have your hand up again or still?
Sorry,
Okay.
I forgot to take it
It's on there.
down.
All right. And then I guess the other thing I'm thinking about is like, if this is like a pre-development funding, I guess I'm just sort of thinking out loud here, like, what if this project doesn't go? What if we give money to this project and it doesn't end up being built? I'm not sure. I don't know, with like some other projects, like, if we give money and then they don't use it, then we get the money back. But it sounds like in this case, that probably wouldn't.
Well,
I don't know.
we'll have spent it on the research.
Yeah, you would have spent it already, but I don't know, Christian, if you like, I
But
think it
can
would
I
just be
say-
like, that money would be,
Can I address this? I mean, we
Yeah.
gave the pickleball people money to do
yeah,
like plans
Mhm.
for a pickleball court, and we don't know that they're going to be able to get the rest of the money to make the pickleball court. So this seems to me on the same level.
yeah. David?
Yeah, I just think that doesn't seem like a realistic condition to put on funding, you know. I don't think there's certainty about much in the world, so you
Yeah,
know, I would have a lot of trouble with that being a condition of our funding things.
I also feel really confident about this project with having a great local partner who's a really skilled, experienced developer, and also having a phenomenal level of support from the state level. Mass Housing Partnership has been there and finding funding too for us every step of the way to help move this along. And I think we've spent they've come up with like $40,000 so far to help this project forward, and that there's a real focus there as well to see something like this happen.
Yeah, I think that governor's bills, like, seems like it's really, this is exactly what they're doing.
all right, any other questions or comments? We've got two others tonight to get to, so. All right,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank
thanks.
you.
Thanks for coming. All right, so next we have Oxbow Design Build Co-op, 187 Hope Street Housing. Continuing our housing theme here.
And I'm Ben Bowman from Oxbow. Nice to
Welcome.
see you all in person here. Well, some of you in person.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so we've got the application up here, total project cost 1 million, CPA funds requested 170,000. Yeah, here's the description: preparing to develop a property at 187 Hope Street as a 2-family home. Preliminary design phase, open to developing as a 3-family home. I guess I am curious to learn more about that decision process, the 2 or 3. And this would be rent levels would be permanently deed restricted to remain affordable to families earning less than or equal to 80% of the AMI, and will aim to beat the low income rent limits, thus serving families earning less than 50% of the AMI. And here's total funding sources. Anyone want to start off with any? I guess I can start off with my question about that decision process of
Yeah,
2 or 3 family and yeah, what?
well, it all
goes
just,
into that?
it depends on funding. That's what it comes down to. A big piece of it is that a 3-unit property requires a sprinkler system. And so that's a big increase in cost. It also on that lot requires a special permit, so there's a little bit more.
Because of the frontage.
It has to do with the lot size, I believe. I don't remember the exact, when we were just getting into this, I did a brief, I looked at the zoning and we said, okay, single family and 2-family are by right. 3-family could be a special permit. And so it's achievable. But it's sort of like, well, when we filled out this application, we were pretty early in our development and we're like, maybe we'll find someone who wants to pay for a sprinkler to get another unit in Greenfield, and that hasn't happened. So to be candid, it's looking like it will probably be a 2-family. There's a chance, one of the interesting things I've discovered in this work is that there are a lot of development pathways for single family, like owner occupant, like financing, funding. And there's a lot of state supported financing and funding for really once you're above 20 units, but even if you're hitting 8 or 10, you start to sort of like qualify. And if you're between like 2 and 7, there's not a lot. So there's a chance that we, out of necessity, will wind up doing a single family. What I feel like we can absolutely are committed to, and which I think is still aligns with our application, is hitting that 80% AMI, at least one unit. I do think, I think that we will do 2 units. It's a little bit confusing right now whether those will be that will be a rental property or owner occupied. We actually, thanks to Megan, who we'll be speaking with next, learned about a project that Habitat for Humanity did in Amherst, where the Amherst Community Land Trust owns a lot. And it's a duplex effectively. So there are 3 pieces of property. There's the lot and each household. And that kind of opens up some interesting funding pathways, because then the residents can qualify for down payment assistance, find all these kinds of things that a rental wouldn't. But it's a long-winded answer to your question, but 2 families seems most likely, and we're still exploring sort of what's the most financially feasible in terms of a rental property or owner occupied.
And if it were owner occupied, would it be owner occupied with a rental, or would there be 2 owners?
We'd be looking at 2 owners.
Okay.
Yeah. Question?
My questions have been answered.
Sure.
Go ahead,
I
guys.
guess my question is around $1 million for a 2-family,
Yeah.
right? Obviously, that's reasonably expensive. We supported works out to about 360 per unit on the supported housing connected to the shelter last year. I know there's been a number of houses built on kind of cheap city lots in the last few years that have been like 3-bedroom houses, and they've sold for 320. And being an old fuddy-duddy, I was like, wow, 320 for somebody's new construction. Seems like a lot of money. But we're looking at basically like $500,000 for a 2 or 3-bedroom house or a duplex, maybe, on a lot on Hope Street. And I know the Oxbow work is super nice, and you guys design for more than a 10-year lifespan, which is nice.
Yeah.
But can you address the sort of the cost disparity somewhat?
Yeah, I mean, I think you took my first talking point, but it is true. We are. Well, I'd also be curious to know that the 360 per unit. I mean, I don't know how many units was that. Were they able to achieve some economies of scale? That obviously doesn't.
Yeah, I mean that was like a 20 unit,
right?
Whole setup on Wells Street, gazillion dollars worth of CDAC funding, which is all sort of like state funny money. But looking at like other just sort of like smaller developments, it's more in the. I mean, I assume Parity Builders is getting some sort of profit off a $320,000 house. They're not just like doing it to like keep people busy. Although,
yeah, I mean, I want to learn.
Maybe that's a thing too.
I'd love to learn how I'm writing this down because I'm curious.
Right.
as you said, we build structures that will last a long time. We're getting into this, having done one affordable housing project on Conway Street. Our experience is with, private residential and commercial clients. And I think, yeah, we are very proud of the houses we build and are excited to build for a wider demographic. We don't really want to compromise the quality of housing that we're building. So that number is a ballpark figure based on our current kind of square foot building costs. And it's unfortunate that the smaller the building, the square foot cost just goes up because you still have to get an excavator. You still have there's a bunch of costs that, like, as your square footage reduces, it's less flooring, yes, but there's a lot of things that stop getting less expensive.
No,
Yeah.
no, definitely, right? You see the people like, look, I made this teeny house for only like $200,000. Like, yeah, but it's like $700 per square foot, right? It's
right.
It's right. It's you still need a bathroom. You still need to like dig out stuff.
Well,
you
that's
still need to connect
exactly
to utilities.
That's exactly it. And I guess I do want to add, in sort of like acknowledgement of Alyssa's comment to the amount that, they applied for with Tim. When I was filling out this application, we have, not been through this process before. We did not know kind of how many applicants you would get or what they would be. And so we asked for the amount that would be the most empowering to us. Also sort of with it, the idea that, well, maybe it's beneficial for this committee to be like, hey, there's a need for all of this funding that we're not able to meet. And I think it seems beneficial to have all the need out there on paper. Having seen the applications come in, we would absolutely love to be funded to our full request. And I also realize that you have a lot on your plate. And so
Right.
yeah, that's just an acknowledgement of the amount of our request.
Yeah, I guess I'll just say it has been a common question for us to ask. What if you're partially funded?
Right.
How would that affect your project?
Yeah, and
Sorry, Don, I'll get to your question right after that. It just kind of flowed.
Okay.
We're going to move forward on this one way or another. And we've had some internal meetings about the sort of timeline and trajectory recently, and I think things are going to speed up. We're working on identifying having a fiscal sponsor commit that will open us up to some grants that we don't, as a for-profit business, qualify for. And then things I think will start moving faster, but we've also been able to say, even if we don't get, I don't want to say this out loud, even if we don't get any funding from you, we're going to build this house. We own the lot. We're committed to the mission. It is sort of part of our good fortune as a worker-owned co-op that we're with this sort of values base. This is something that we want to do, and we have at this point the sort of foundation as a company to do it. The question is just how quickly it will happen. And it might happen very slowly if we don't get funding, and could happen very quickly if you give us a full amount. We have architects in our office that could start putting this together. We could start getting permits in and breaking ground, this summer, this fall. I think it's probably going to be somewhere in between.
Donna, you've had your hand up for a while.
Thank you, and I'm gonna lower my hand right now before I forget. So I heard you say that you're not clear still on whether or not this is a rental or an owner occupied.
Yeah.
My question is for you and also for the committee, and it may be a Stuart question. If this becomes an owner occupied unit, or units, then I'm assuming that people are going to buy them, which means that people are going to pay for them. So what happens to that money and what is the impact in terms of CPC funding if it becomes just a private property? Thank you.
Yeah, well, we like permanent deed restrictions, whether this is a multifamily rental or owner occupied. So the way that works is, we will need to partner with another organization that has the capacity to do income qualifications. So in the event, and it would be very similar to the way Habitat for Humanity homes are resold. In the event that we would first sell the property to an income qualified family. If they choose to sell the property in the future, they would need to sell it for an amount, that is established by the current AMI. Does that help?
Yeah, and I guess I would just add that I think that is a pretty common thing with CPA projects is that a house could be funded, and then basically the goal of the CPA funding would be to get that deed restriction. And then once it's in, you got permanent affordable housing in that location. So I think that's a normal thing to happen, even, owner occupied like that. That's my understanding.
Ben, when would you have an idea of whether it's going to be rental or owner occupied? I mean, if you don't know, you don't know. I'm just thinking of our timelines and such.
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm
That's fine.
sorry.
That's okay. That's
Yeah.
okay. It's just, kind of a question about from our overall picture.
Yeah.
Okay.
Christian, could you scroll down to the next page? And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about your other funding sources, like you've listed here.
Yeah, so this is, again, these are some broad strokes, but the Mass Save All Electric incentive is very straightforward. Oxbow hits very aggressive energy efficiency targets regularly. So we know that we will be able to get that. The reason that we are, and this is, the filling out the two charts, I think I got a little bit confused, but so we're hoping for, the 200,000. Just look, I'm sorry. So the $1 million total has the 100,000 of in-kind value. So Oxbow is not expecting to turn any profit on this project. We have other concurrent projects that will, keep our company going. 170 from CPA funds and then other funding 730. So that would be the 30,000 all electric, the 200,000 private funds, and the $500,000 loan. Yeah, we're poking around at everything. And some of that comes in there. I have, a bunch of grants that we're starting to fill out applications for, but we need our fiscal sponsor to be ironed out before we can submit those applications. There's also, if we go the homeowner route, there's workforce housing has, I think, $30,000 down payment assistance. I think it's 50,000 if you're in some districts, but in Greenfield, it's 30,000. So that would be, that would chip away at it. And we're working on cobbling that together. And we have a lot of funds that we're optimistic about. We have many more that we've had to rule out because of what I was describing about that gap of available funding for, small low-rise housing projects, which is a bummer because it's, I think, having lived in rental units, it's like, those are the ones that feel nice to live in. And for me, it's speaking totally personally for myself. It's a nice scale of development. And so it's a real advantage that this pocket of money can offer is to create neighborhood scale housing that other, funding sources don't address.
I might, one of the things, Alyssa's not on the call anymore, but one of the things that is part of the discussion around the bond bill is to have a rural set aside. Because the issue it has always been with the state that they want to fund larger projects based on economies of scale, and we can't build them here. Many of the small towns are not willing to do anything that's larger than 10 units. And so we end up in this situation where part of the reason we have not been able to build housing here as fast as some other parts of the state is because of the scale question. So we've asked for a rural set aside. There are a number of set asides in the bond bill already. And one of the things that Alyssa in particular and I and a number of other people have worked on is to try to get a specific amount of money where it would be competitive but we'd be competing against other small projects. So that, and in that case, something like your project would fit into that. But we won't know until June or July whether that's in there or not.
Any other questions or comments from the committee here?
I think it's great. You guys could be building all kinds of expensive housing for all kinds of people, but I just want to commend you for, doing stuff from your heart to create housing for people who really need it.
Thanks. It feels good, which it's not for nothing. So it's like, there's something selfish in being selfless, I guess.
Some kind of dividend. What is it?
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ben.
So next we've got our last full application of the year to review here. Habitat for Humanity, 184 Petty Plain Road. Yeah, there we go. Total project, 275,000, CPA requested 15,000. So this would be a small, sturdy, affordable, all-electric home on a small parcel of land, 184 Petty Plain Road. Yeah, I missed the AMI 60%.
Yep.
Sell it to the first home buyer who earns, first time home buyer who earns less than 60% of the area median income. And then we've got the funding. Anyone have any questions to start off with on this one?
I have one for Megan.
Go for it.
Megan, when do you expect to have clarity on the other funding sources? Obviously, ours is a small piece of the action here. So do you have any idea of when you'll know on some of the other things?
I reached out to Mass Housing about the neighborhood stabilization program grant we applied for, and they told us that they'd likely tell us in March. If we are not funded through that program, we plan to apply for smaller grants to try and piece it together and do more local community fundraising during construction, because we have committed to starting this project in spring. And we just launched the selection cycle for the homeowners who might become part of this house, who might purchase this house, excuse me. And the deadline for the application cycle is April 3rd. So if you know anyone who would like to apply needs a 1-story, 1-bedroom house, now is the time to apply.
All right, Donna?
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about the lot itself? Because when I Googled this, it looked like a place with a single family home already on it.
There was a single family home on this lot that was demolished in maybe 2016 or so. We actually bought this lot from Rural Development Inc. It was a part of the land that they acquired to build the Wisdom Way Solar Village. And so it is the frontage lot on the corner of Petty Plain Road and Wisdom Way. They had acquired, and there was an old farmhouse on, yep, so the lot is the land to the left of the white van there. So it's just this small corner infill lot, but it meets the minimum zoning requirements. So we're planning to build a small 1-bedroom, 650 square foot house here. It's pretty flat. There's a sidewalk. So this will be a house that could be adapted for someone in a wheelchair or had other mobility impairments.
All right, thank you.
And I will echo the challenge of funding for these small projects. You know, it doesn't fit the guidelines for most large state funding programs. The neighborhood stabilization program is focused on neighborhoods that have blight and improving. And because there was a house here that was dilapidated and was torn down, that was our justification for applying for that grant. And we hope they will agree with us and think it's a worthy project to fund.
I just wanted to point out that in the application, it does say that this would also have a deed restriction on the property, so it would be affordable in perpetuity, just to point that out. And also, hopefully the other committee members already saw this, but there were 1, 2, 3, 4, there were like 5 letters of support that we got for this project. And I didn't mention on the other projects, but we did have one for each of the other projects as well.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that you mentioned, the deed restriction, is that because we acquired this land from another nonprofit affordable housing developer, which they sold to us at a discount because they knew we were going to be building something aligned with their mission, which was great. But if the CPA gives us funding of any amount for this project, that then becomes a local action, which means that we could apply for the state's local action program along with the city, which would facilitate the deed restriction process. So we would then sign a regulatory agreement between the city and the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities and Habitat that would make that deed restriction enforceable in perpetuity. So having some sort of local funds into the project allows us to go through that formal process and then get the house onto the state affordable housing inventory.
Good to know. All right, other questions or comments? Good.
Seems good.
Not seeing any other questions or comments, I guess maybe this one was a little more straightforward for people. I don't know, maybe it's the ask of only 15,000 makes it a little easier, I don't know.
We have done this before in town, over on Smith Street in Greenfield. We built a 2-bedroom home. We had many, and that was 5 years ago, maybe. And, you know, and many years ago, we participated in a project on Montague City Road. So we have a track record in the city as well.
All right.
Yeah, I know that there was a letter from the person on Smith Street. I know her, and she's ecstatic to be part of that, and is a great part of the community. You know, sort of somewhat related to that, like I don't know what square footage you're looking at, but like, can you fit a 2-bedroom house that lot?
We probably could
Just
have,
that.
at this point, we've committed to the 1-bedroom. We've already started marketing. So when we do our marketing, everyone who applies who's eligible gets put into a lottery. And
Mhm.
we found that if we build a diversity of different housing sizes, it allows more people the opportunity to, because there's a preference in the lottery for using all the bedrooms. So if we only
Right.
build 3-bedroom homes, then single people are always at the bottom of the pile for the preference in the lottery. So by
Mhm.
doing a 1-bedroom home, we're sort of opening that up for the single or couple who might not get preference in the lottery otherwise.
Gotcha. Cool. Thanks.
All right, any other question? All right, looks like no more questions, so thanks, Megan, for being here, and that wraps up all of our applications for the year. Again, I'll say this for the YouTube crowd out there, any of the public who's watching this, please let us know what you think of all these projects. We'll have meetings coming up. We'll talk about that next on our agenda here, about getting public outreach, but yeah, thanks for everyone who was here tonight. All right, so as I just said, next on our agenda is public outreach for feedback on 2023-2024 projects. Should we start with the survey? Start talking about the survey? So,
I did the survey. It seems to
Mhm.
work okay.
okay,
The only thing I didn't do was submit. And so, I think that the overall structure works fine. And in terms of, and we can, it was logical, it works well.
yeah,
Is there time to do it still tomorrow?
for
The
you
survey?
to do it
Yeah,
before
yeah.
it goes out. Well, I guess what we just have to decide when we're sending it out.
Okay.
When we're making it public, which we haven't done yet, so. And thanks again to Donna for putting this all
Yes,
together.
thank you, Donna.
Yeah, so this, if anyone, members of the public, if anyone took our survey last year, very similar to that. So you'll have questions about all the projects people can do. I guess we have to decide when this is going to be public and when it's going to end.
I guess it depends on when you're
Yeah.
able to have the
Yeah.
public feedback session in
Mhm.
person.
And that was one that we did a doodle poll or something.
Yeah,
What-
I guess we can talk about that too, kind
That
of
could be purchased.
some time, just figure out the meetings, maybe should happen
That's part of
first.
public outreach.
Yeah.
So this was the results of the doodle poll. You can ignore Tom towards any quorum requirements. He's not on the committee anymore. So our regular meeting time would be Thursday, February 22nd. That was the plan to have for the public feedback session. Unfortunately, Garth and Wisty,
I'll be able to come. I can
you
be
could
able
come to that. Garth, is that an absolute no for you, unfortunately, or? You're
You're
muted.
muted, Gareth. We can't hear you.
Might be looking at his calendar.
You're muted, Gareth. We can't hear you.
Garth, yeah, you're muted if you're trying to talk to us.
March 14th, I should be able to make.
How about the 22nd though, February 22nd?
February 22nd, I'm working that evening,
Hmm.
so can't make that.
Amy, I didn't get your results for this one. Would the 22nd work for you?
Yes.
Okay. So that's everyone besides Garth. I do think we do have to have that feedback session pretty well in advance of making decisions so everyone can fully mull it over. So I think that's unfortunately the best day. Sorry, Garth.
That's all right.
You can always watch the recording.
I assume that would be at the at the Zon Center, and yeah, I try to like go through the recording and see what people had to say
Yep.
and or minutes.
And I guess part of that, I'm wondering if we want to, if we want to do anything extra for that meeting, like, either to help bring people in, like, should we have food there or, anything to try and get people to come or, incentivize people to give us feedback or,
Remember that one was pretty well attended last year just by its nature, because so the other thing we'll talk about is press release. And basically very emphasizing like, you can fill out this form and you can give us feedback that way, but if you want to give in-person feedback, this is the meeting too. We always have public comment at our meetings, but this is the one that we're really focusing on the public, and people turned out well.
Yeah,
Yeah, we did fine with that.
yeah, a lot of those people were pickleball people. So
That's
I,
true.
I don't know how spread out evenly over, a lot of the projects the turnout
Mhm.
was.
Mhm.
But I don't know how much publicity we gave.
So the plan for this year would be the same as last year, which was a press release, which would show up in the recorder and other various places that the communications director sends it to, as well as social media posts from the city. And then just on my front, there's various committees and individuals that I just send an email to, letting them know that this is the time if you want to participate.
I wonder, I think we did this for a public hearing, but I wonder if we should have like flyers, because we could have a QR code on a flyer that someone could take this survey online, but it would also say like you could come to our meeting as well. So yeah, I don't know. I think that might make it easier for people to stumble across, maybe if we had flyers out in different places.
Yeah. And we have flyered the public hearing, but I don't think we flyered this feedback session last year, but you absolutely could.
Yes. I mean, I was also thinking like, people who are going to the library to use the computers, if there was a flyer right there, like, hey, while you're on your computer, take this survey.
Master
a
plan
really
thing
good idea.
seemed really well attended on Monday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We seem to get the word out really well.
I mean, I'm sure that, I have connections to some larger, connections to, in terms of, I'd be happy to use those to get it out. If we had a flyer, that would be helpful, because then I can just put that out there. And so we can do it electronically and do it, and have some physical flyers. Matt was great at helping us with the senior, tax thing. So I think that, it doesn't have to be fancy, it just has to be out there.
Mhm.
Right, and stuff get hung up at Elm Terrace or
Yeah,
Greenfield Gardens, and put around at the co-op and other flyer places around town.
Yeah.
now, and we're talking about this for the 22nd, so it happened to happen pretty fast.
Yeah. Mhm.
That's the one thing. It would really have to be done almost, immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I don't think we're gonna have another meeting by then, so, I guess if Christian and I can work on putting something together and getting it out as soon as possible, and then, we can vote later about like if we have to pay for printing costs, we can
And
cover that with administrative.
I'll have to be attending. I'll be in California, so I'll have to do through Zoom.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that makes a difference. I know I was in person last year, and
That's
it was really
okay.
nice to be there.
Yeah, John's on has a very similar setup to here. It has the TV.
Okay.
You'll be on the screen. All the people there can see you, so they know you're listening.
Yeah, and that would be good to have on the flyer too, that people could join that meeting, remotely. as well.
Yep. Okay.
So
it sounds like
the
we said-
feedback, the public feedback, and then when do we, recognizing that, when do we want to have people send in the finishing in terms of the survey?
So last year it was
basically 1 week after. So last year the meeting was on the 21st. The form closed on the 28th. This year, 22nd, it'd close on the 29th if we wanted to do the same. So if we announce everything like on Monday or Friday this week, that's about 3 weeks for people to be giving responses and getting plans to attend the meeting.
Mhm. Yeah, and that way there's the publicity of like at the meeting itself too, that, you know, if people hadn't filled out the survey.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Okay.
We also have the presentation from last year that I've already started updating that Travis would give at the meeting itself, basically just outlining what the projects are, framing it that way before people give their comments.
Mhm.
Okay. Great.
And then I do have the press release, which is basically almost the exact same as last year. I have a draft started. Giving people the numbers, giving people the link, telling them how to participate. That would go out to the communications department.
Okay.
Okay. Cool.
Anyone have any other ideas to add to that meeting planning?
No.
No? All right.
All right, so we settled on the 22nd. After last year, we had 2 meetings after that public feedback session. At the end of that public feedback session, if there's time, you could start beginning discussion of the overall projects, but then you'd probably want one session to kind of review the results of the survey, analyze how all of you grade the projects, start to come to some conclusions, and then have one more meeting after that where you are doing the voting and finalizing everything. So this is why I kind of asked for a few dates for people, and it looks like, which one?
Fortunately, Donna isn't available at those last 2.
Yeah.
Are we doing our online sort of or our survey forms with the right, the scoring sheets again?
Yeah. I guess we can talk about that really quickly. So last year, all of you filled out the scoring sheets kind of on the sheets themselves, and it was quite tedious to kind of put it all into a Excel form. So this year, I've kind of set it up so you can just do it all on one sheet. There's a tab to refer to the scoring itself. You can toggle back and forth, and you can just go down through all the projects real quickly, and then send that off to me, and I can collate all of them so you can average everything out.
So I think we were waiting until after this meeting to send that out, and
Yeah, so after this meeting, you all of you could begin your scoring, and it's kind of on your own, and then you'll get feedback from the public, and you can see how the two kind of compared, and you can make adjustments as needed. That's what happened last year.
yeah. And I guess as part of the scoring, have we gotten any like updates from any of the applicants that we've already met with, like updates on? I know we had asked for like how historic projects were meeting the Department of Interior standards. Have we haven't gotten any of that yet. Okay, no. Just
Yeah,
that was kind of I think that was the reason we were waiting until the end, was like if we had questions and then people would have time to respond. But maybe by the time I guess we probably want to have this done. Maybe if we all fill these out by that, before that public meeting, the public information meeting on the 22nd.
For these ones, you could do it.
We could do it out.
Do it the same deadline as the public, the 29th, and then we'll have both of those done. And me and you, Travis, can begin working on creating those.
I mean, it is possible that somebody might say something in the public information session that would trigger something and go, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that. So I would like to wait until the 29th to have all that stuff in.
That sounds good. So the agenda item we're on is public outreach for feedback. and So it sounds like we're set. I mean, that's pretty much, we got the survey.
I guess the other two meeting dates.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
and then,
Considering that Garth is questionable for one on the 14th. And Donna is unavailable for the 21st and the 28th.
David also can't make.
Oh, and David, oh, right, David can't make that.
Yeah, I mean, these meetings like
Okay.
really should be everyone.
Yeah, it should be every,
Especially the last one. Maybe the
right.
first one would be okay. The last one, you're doing the voting. Everyone should
So
get it.
I think that I could probably, I mean, I am once again in Florida at that time, but you know, on the 21st and the 28th, I don't know that I'm going to be having a rec commission meeting from Florida on the 21st, but I could potentially make it. So I think that if everybody else is there, then we should probably just go ahead and book it. For one
So
of
are you
those
saying for
dates.
the 21st or the 28th, either one you could potentially make?
Yeah, the 21st is our regular rec commission meeting, but I don't know that I would be able to do that. We don't do them hybrid anyway.
Mhm.
So, yeah, and I think I'm bringing my daughter's visiting Florida and I'm bringing her to the airport, but I should be back or I could get my husband to do it, so. Yeah,
So if we set up the two deliberation dates for the 21st and the 28th, that would mean everybody could be there.
Yeah, can you make those, Amy?
oh, so we're talking about not just one of those dates, but actually both of them?
Yeah, it'll take two, because one of them will be digesting kind of the public feedback, all the charts and stuff, and then the last one will be really about voting and making the decisions.
Okay,
David, were you just
Yeah,
having
I could probably work it out to join by Zoom on the 12th. But I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah.
I
Too many.
I cannot do it on the 14th, unfortunately.
I can't do the 12th. I have Conservation Commission. meeting that.
Okay, so it looks like the 21st and the 28th are the deliberation dates.
Yeah, and I guess Donna, if you could only make it to one, I guess the 28th would be better. And then the 21st, because like the 21st will just be like looking at all the charts and like, going over. So I don't know if you'd have a chance to like listen to that on 1.5 speed on YouTube or something like after that meeting, if you weren't able to make it. And then at least,
yeah, okay.
I don't know.
Okay,
21st and the 28th.
Yeah.
Double check. Hold on 1 second.
okay.
I just thought of something. I have something going on with the March. Okay, yeah, 28th is
What days of the week are those?
fine. 20, they're both Thursdays.
Okay, good enough. Yeah.
It was the
I know
29th.
I know I said yes.
I know. If it was Friday the 29th, I wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let me get back to the agenda here. Okay, so that sets that all up. Sorry, just seeing what's on the screen here. So then the next thing we have on the agenda is the timeline for the CPA cycle going forward. I just asked Christian to put that on the agenda tonight because we had started talking about this at the last meeting and I was thinking if we did want to change the schedule going forward, we would need to do that like as soon as possible.
Mhm.
We're doing it for this next year. Or if we started, say we wanted to move it 6 months ahead, maybe move it 3 months ahead the next time and then 3 months ahead again, the following year. I just thought we should probably talk about that.
Mhm.
Like if we wait until after we vote on these projects, we're not gonna have time.
No.
We wouldn't have an option to do that,
Right.
so.
Yeah.
And I know I saw an email you were reaching out to some other towns. I don't know if you heard back from anyone.
Yeah, I was able, so there's a community preservation coordinators group that does emails to each other and does meetings. And I asked them if anyone does it differently than Greenfield could let me know what timeline you use. So this doesn't include anyone, no one really responded that had the same timeline. I'm assuming there definitely are some out there. But these are a few that do different timelines. Easiest way to think about it is when applications open. So Gloucester opens their applications in February, Medford opens them in April. Watertown has rolling pre-apps, but kind of starts up in June, July, and Springfield starts up in January. And for the most part, it's all kind of the same length for the review and in between the steps.
But so but the council votes are later.
Yeah, it really depends on like the exact timing, because you might miss like, and Greenfield might do it differently than others, but I know if you don't get at committee chairs within 5 days, you're not gonna be on that month
Right.
to do the first reading, so it really depends.
So if we were to move up 3 months, we'd be basically similar to the Springfield process. So we'd be September, October, November. We wouldn't want to do it in December, so we really are looking at January at the.
Yeah, the one I was looking at kind of was Gloucester. And that was mainly because it seems like for this committee and probably a lot of committees, the holiday time is very hard to schedule meetings.
Right.
And having that be the heart of our review time was challenging these last 2 years. So I think, and Gloucester seems to kind of work around that. Obviously, people will be on summer vacations and stuff in the summer months, but we can figure out a little bit around those. It'll be more spread out than we're not doing Christmas week, we're not doing Thanksgiving week.
Right.
Right, and they don't vote until October, so you have like a couple meetings maybe in the summer, and then you have something in September, and then you have a final thing in October.
And this does put us kind of on the timeline to be very separate from when capital's being approved.
Right.
Basically, the pre-apps are due in March. At that point, it's right before capital starts going before council, but at least you know if the mayor put it forward at that point.
Yeah, that's just Amy, just so, because I know you're new to this. One of the issues is, for instance, like the pickleball folks are going for capital money from the city. And we have to make a decision basically before we know whether they are going to get that money. And so what we're trying to do is figure out a way to do it so that we know what the capital decision is for that year from the city, and therefore we can make some decisions either to, add something to what capital money is, or if they've gotten all the money through the capital money, then they don't need us at all, so we can rule that out. That's the kind of thing that we've been trying to wrestle with for the last 2 years.
So I don't know if we're kind of able to make this kind of decision yet, because there is an issue about when the CPA funds are actually available and when they actually end up in the city's coffers. And I don't know, because we'd be doing 2 very back-to-back application periods if we tried to basically start it up in next month.
Right.
And so it might be more worthwhile to have a very long pre-app period late next year and then get onto this timeline in 2025. But it's something that can be discussed once we know exactly when funds would be available.
But all the CPCs vote before their councils, right?
Yeah, that's part of the.
It's a common problem.
Yeah, the issue is we're lucky because we're not, towns that have select boards or have to go to town meeting, it's a whole different thing. But we can go every month, any month, but the issue is how does it fit with the other budgetary issues of the city in order to make it all work and make it clear? Because we ran into it last year, and obviously we're going to run into it this year as well.
Yeah, and we also have to we vote at the beginning of the fiscal year for how much money essentially we can spend, and then that has to happen before the end of the fiscal year, so
Mhm.
the city council has to vote on it to approve, the funding before the end of the fiscal year, so that's kind of the way it happens right now, is that we open the applications after the fiscal year begins, and then we wrap up right before the fiscal year ends.
Right.
Yeah, there is something to be said about if you do wait long enough, you'll eventually have a pot of money where because right now, basically the way it's working out is you're taking half the money from previous year and taking half the money from your budget, the future money that you can access, but it's not set in stone yet. But if you waited long enough, you'd just have one single year pot of money and you wouldn't have to be touching the future. You'd wait until it's completely finalized, gone through the free cash process, and it's all settled. So there's something to be said about waiting, or you could continue to do the way you're doing. Both are valid. So
David, do you have a question?
Yeah, I thought that last point just speaks directly to my question, which was about, when do we know how much money we have to spend? Like if we're taking Gloucester as the model, to move toward, like, would we know how much money we have when the application's open? And also, when is does the capital decision making happen on a regular timeline, or is that variable? And how does like Gloucester line up with when Greenfield makes that final decision about the capital expenditures? Does anybody know?
I know capital is usually kind of December through middle of spring up until right before the regular budget cycle.
Right.
So right now.
Right now. So yeah, so we would know by the time we would actually have the applications would be due. We would have a pretty good idea of what the capital situation is.
So wait, you say that the capital is happening right now?
Yeah, like Christie's, I'm sure probably talking with the mayor about her capital projects.
Okay, so and so right now it just means that they're doing their presentations and stuff. They're not deciding on amounts right now.
No, yeah, they're doing capital committee meetings, which are the very first step before recommending the.
And then
project to council.
they make their decisions when?
Two months from now.
Yeah, it's usually before they do the regular budget.
Yeah.
So let's say May.
And it has to happen
April,
before
May.
it has to happen before the end of the fiscal year.
Right.
So we know that we have that drop dead date. I would also add that last year, when we funded the bocce ball court, we already knew that Christie had some money from capital from the year before. So, I mean, I think if people are coupling, like we have to decide with our money in the same fiscal year that they decide theirs, I just want to caution that that may not be true. It's like they can have their capital and the fiscal year can end. They know that, it's June and they know that they've gotten their capital vote. And then we could be deciding, in July or September, and they're still able to use that pot of money. And I also think that it makes sense to, to wait and build up that pot of money that we have, as Christian said. I mean, one of the reasons that last year, we had a little bit more money than we do because we had not started the process, but we had already been collecting for CPC from taxes. Does that all make sense to people? I'm not sure if I was clear there.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, David?
Yeah, just so if we move to a schedule like Gloucester's, would that accomplish what Donna was just talking about in terms of, and that you were also mentioning, Christian, about the option where you know all the funds that you have to spend, you kind of have that full year budget or whatever?
I think so, because you wouldn't be doing it this year, you'd be doing it next year. At that point, everything kind of would be pretty settled. I'd have to look at the exact timing of it. But definitely, it would definitely be more certain than if we tried to push it really fast. So, yeah.
I'm just wondering if we try, I'm looking at the Gloucester schedule, and obviously we have to do it yesterday in order to meet that schedule. But if we did try to start the application process this spring, would that, I'm walking around trying to figure this out. If we did, for instance, like more like the Medford thing, so in April or May, we had the applications open and available, would we be able to do that this coming year, and that with the idea that we would start earlier each time?
So you're saying Medford next year, Gloucester the year after that?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Would that work?
I guess the only problem is that we would be opening applications before the council's voting on the current applications. Pre-applications, they have not even due until July.
Right. Right.
City council would vote.
I think at this point, it might be best to see what the finance department kind of thinks on this,
Okay.
because I know they had expressed kind of, it might be better to make, because you guys have a currently separate CPC budget, and then you're doing appropriations very separately from that, to kind of combine the two. So they might be almost in the opposite direction, where you're doing your CPC recommendations entirely from your current fiscal year's budget. So that might be actually the better option.
So should we table this till the next meeting after we hear from the finance
Yeah,
department?
I can talk with them
Okay.
and figure out the timing of the funding.
So which agenda, I'm trying to figure out what meting does
So
that go to?
next
So the
is
February
February
22nd.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can talk about that right after
Okay.
the public input part.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
So let's see the agenda here. Old business, February and March meeting schedule. We already got to that. Prior year CPA project updates. Did we have any more updates on any project?
Not really. No quarterly reports have come in. So no.
Okay. All right, so then our next meeting is February 22nd, 5:30 PM, public feedback and overall discussion. John's on, I assume. And before then, Christian and I will work on getting a flyer together and press release.
Flyer, press release, presentation.
Presentation together. Yeah.
Okay.
And I will send out those scoring sheets to all of you tomorrow, so you can start your own individual scoring.
Right.
So we're all gonna be starting our scoring independently?
Yep.
Okay. We'll show up at the meeting, like
So,
scored up.
Well, by the 29th, send your scoring sheets to me, and by the 29th, so I can start averaging all of them together.
Okay. Yeah, so I think one of the things we can do is we can have them all done and in our computers, and then if somebody comes in during the public comment and says something that makes us think maybe we want to change, we can make those changes, and then you can send them to Christian.
Okay. All right, so that public meeting is the next thing on our calendar.
February 22nd,
The 22nd.
5:30 at the Johns.
And your suggestion is it's in your computer, you're listening to things and see if like anybody kind of changes your mind about.
Right, like the pickleball, I can use an example. Last time when the pickleball folks came in, I think I was certainly on the fence about any funds going to them because they wanted $300,000, and that would have just drained us. And by the time they were through, I said, okay, there needs to be something going to them. It can't be the full request. And so that was something that we were able to kind of think through. So I think it was useful to wait until then.
Do we have a sense of like how other CPCs like break down what goes to what? It's all public record, right?
Yeah, I think.
how much goes to each category, you
Yeah,
mean?
because someone else, I don't know where I was. They were talking about how Deerfield has been using a lot of their CPA for like their cemeteries. And this person's opinion was that that was kind of not as important as usage of funding. But I think it is interesting to think about like what is the breakdown of different, municipalities and townships.
I think it kind of, the very base level, obviously, is the 10% to each category. And then from there, it really is depending on applications, and then obviously the priorities that are set up in your CPA plan, which right now your number one is housing. And so you'd expect housing to end up being kind of the larger percentage based on that, but it obviously, again, depends on the applications. So I think that's pretty much how it works out in other communities too. It really depends on
Based on like what the community's priorities are. Yeah, I mean, really, as long as, yeah, like you said, as long as you got at least 10% to each
There was a
category.
few thing on the,
Go ahead, Garth.
I was just gonna say, the Commonwealth Beacon news site has been following it a little bit. And if you go to commonwealthbeacon.org and just type in like CPA funding, they sort of have a breakdown of like over the last
Garth froze, but
years, like where has the funding been? So it's like over the past 2 decades, 195 out of Massachusetts 351 cities and towns have signed on to the CPA. 70 of them have spent less than 10% on affordable housing since joining the program, with suburbs overall designating 19% of their CPA to housing, while urban and rural communities have spent 40 to 50% of their stuff on housing. So that, I mean, that doesn't have like, the exact breakdowns, but it seems like that would probably or possibly be from the community preservation group there, right? Stewart's
Yeah.
group might have the overall.
Yeah, there's a chart I've seen floating around how it's averaged out for the entire state, how much percentage is going to each category in reality.
Yeah.
That's just for an average though.
Yeah, and that's part of the, I feel like that's part of what we get from like the public feedback is like what the public feels the priority areas are.
Yeah.
Because last year, so you weren't here and you didn't see them, but I like made all these like bar graphs based on like people's responses to the survey and showing like if someone said it was like their most important category or whatever, that was like a certain thing. And like housing projects, those were most important to people. And the other ones, very few people said it was like their most important thing. So we'll hopefully get to see that breakdown again and like, what the public's, that's where you were saying like, what did you say, Deerfield? That, I mean, if the public wants their PPA money to be used for that, then I mean, that's up to them. Like, if that's up to their CPC to determine what the public wants the money spent on.
Yeah, and also too, that for instance, housing, the need for affordable housing has been a really big issue here. It is not as big an issue in Deerfield. So it would make sense that the priorities would be different.
All right, we're at 6:59 PM right now.
Okay.
I think we're at the end of the agenda, so I guess we'll see everyone at public hearing,
Okay.
or not public hearing, but public input session.
Yeah. I move that we adjourn.
All right, motion to adjourn.
Second,
Seconded. Everyone in favor of adjourning?
yes.
Aye. All right, I think that's unanimous. So we are adjourned at 6:59 PM.